It's time!
What is going on, everybody? PickinFightsTom here for Pickin' Fights, bringing you all of the picks, breakdowns, bets, and what our general thoughts are on the upcoming UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Allen, taking place Saturday, 4/15. It is Sunday, so just under a week away, and I'm super excited for this fight. We just had UFC 287 a night ago. Izzy gets his belt back. Stunning knockout of Alex Pereira. We see Gilbert Burns go out there, get the job done over George Masvidal, who then retires right before that fight. He got called out by Kevin Holland after getting it done in the second round over Santiago Ponzinibbio. So there's a lot of really good fights. Really bad night for betting. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter didn't do great. I fall into that category. I think it was probably my worst night of picks since we started picking fights. I went, I think, maybe 2-5, 3-5. Really fell short. There's a lot of upsets, a lot of things that didn't necessarily see coming. A lot of great performances, a lot of lackluster performances. I will say, like with the Raul Rosas Jr. pick, I did pick Rosas Jr., but I did give the caveat that, like, hey, this isn't, a freebie, and this is something that I would definitely be concerned about. And there were a couple other instances of that. So, you know what? We're going to have short memories. We're going to put it in the past. We're going to look forward to UFC Fight Night, Holloway versus Allen, because guess what? It is something to look forward to. And I personally am super excited for this card. It's a 6-fight main card. Last week was a 5-fight. Feels short when it's 5 fights, feels long when it's 6 fights. I can't really find a happy medium for myself, but ultimately a main card when it's free on a fight night, 6-fight is what you want, especially when it's of this caliber. So before we jump into it, I just want to say, go ahead and drop the video a like, tell us what your thoughts are, drop a comment, and be sure to subscribe. We really do appreciate it. We got over the 250 subscriber hump last week. We really appreciate it for everybody who does subscribe with us and run with us. We do appreciate it. We're growing this thing week by week, and every subscription matters. So if you're watching, and we would really appreciate it if you give it a like and drop that subscribe button. Tap out that subscribe button, knock it out, head kick it out, right hook it out if you're Israel Adesanya. So really do appreciate that. And then you can go ahead, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram for some of our picks to keep up with us during the week. We do film this on Sundays, and there's a lot that happens between now and the fights and the weigh-ins. We try to bring you some more updated picks a little bit later in the week, like a Wednesday, Thursday time frame via a YouTube short, and we'll update some things on Twitter as well. So make sure you follow us there. And like I said, if you're listening to the video, whether it's here or on Spotify, let us know what you think of them, whether that's through Twitter, Instagram, or comment on the video. We really do appreciate it. So with that being said, it's time for me to jump into our prelim notables. And with that, I'm going to go into the very first fight on the card. Jocelyn Edwards taking on Lucy Pudilova. I'm going to be going with this fight to actually not picking a winner here, shocker, but I'm going to be going with this fight to go the distance. And I know that that's not, a novel or a crazy idea here, but at the end of the day, a lot of women's UFC fights just don't go to the distance, and I don't think this is going to be an exception. We look at some of the 5-on in, and Lucy Pudilova, she's got the decision win 2 years ago, decision win or decision loss, split decision win. She has the most recent win over Yanan Wu, elbows from back mount, which, listen, that is potentially an opportunity there, but Yanan Wu is not a very good UFC fighter. I think she's got one UFC win, and that was against someone who had maybe next to no UFC wins. So Yanan Wu is not necessarily a win that I would be looking and saying, oh, she's improving and she's developing some type of finishing ability. Lucy Pudilova has a bit of a ground game. That's probably what her strength is. So, the fact that she's going to decision means she doesn't have a lot of finishing ability, and then maybe against lesser opponents, if she finds herself in a really good situation, she can get it done. But, 28 years old, still young, so maybe she is developing into that, but I just don't see her being able to go out there and finish Jocelyn Edwards, who has pretty solid ground game of ground ability of her own. She's kind of well versed. She has the ability to strike with you, but again, doesn't have enough skill, I feel, or finishing ability in one particular area to be able to get this one done. That makes me scared. So I'm going to actually say that this one's going to go to decision, and I'm going to take that one as my first prelim lock. Jocelyn Edwards, Lucy Pudilova going to decision. And then this card is actually filled with a lot of really good close contested fights. Minus 200, minus 250, I think is right around where most of these are. So the other prelim notable fight that I want to talk about is Brandon Royval versus Mateusz Nicolau. This is going to be a really interesting fight, and it's a really good matchup, as you can see, -165 and +135. So it's a fairly close line as it stands right now. Brandon Royval is a little bit more wild. He, throws some of the more exotic combinations. He likes to do like fast leg kicks. He's a guy who throws some like spinning stuff. He'll throw a little bit more wild of the kicks when he's on the feet, and then also when he's on the ground, he likes to look for the submission. He's not necessarily, you have submission over position guys and position over submission guys. Generally speaking, the position over submission guys are the guys who do better, but they're less exciting. And then you have the submission over position guys, who are the guys who can, kind of lock up submissions from the ground at any time, but they also find themselves in scrambles and in bad positions after that too. I think that's a little bit more of the category that Brandon Royval will throw himself into. He tries to engage in the scrambles. He tries to use his BJJ, and he uses some of those less traditional techniques to try and get those submissions. So he's not going to be going for your traditional rear naked chokes. He's going to try and go after you with the knee bar and try and go for like an ankle lock. And he's going to be the guy who's swimming kind of under his opponent on top. Mateusz Nicolau is a guy who has a really strong grappling base and also really strong leg kicks and like a kickboxing style. So he mixes it really well as somebody who has a strong grappling base, but also a really good kickboxing, kind of stand-up style. In this case, against Brandon Royval, I think he's going to be able to utilize some of his anti-grappling, use the wrestling to keep on the top. I don't see a lot of situations where Brandon Royval's on the top for an extended period of time and Mateusz Nicolau's on the bottom, kind of losing that time in the cage, losing those points. I think if anything, and if this fight's on the ground, it's probably because Nicolau is on top and Royval is maybe going for a submission. Maybe he was dropped and he got to that position, or maybe he, went for a takedown and it failed and ended up on the bottom, and then he's trying to be aggressive from there. So I think this one is not one where we're going to see a finish. I think both guys are well versed enough and well matched up enough on the feet that we're not necessarily going to see a knockout or a stunning knockout. But I think we definitely could see a decision. And if so, I think Nicolau, using his grappling, is going to be able to be in the dominant position for longer. Even if Royval, in like the first or even the second, is going to be able to have a moment where maybe he locks up a submission and Nicolau is able to get out of it. I think Nicolau is going to be the stronger guy. He's going to have the bigger frame. He's going to have the better wrestling and the grappling to be able to defend himself against some of those more aggressive submission offensive situations. And then on the feet, I think he also has the advantage there. So I'm going to be going with Mateusz Nicolau. He's got the knockout over match now, so he does have the power to put it away. And he's fought some, higher level competition. I mean, David Dvorak, 20-3, Tim Elliott, obviously a cheeky veteran there. Manel Cape is not an easy day out for anybody. So really solid competition. There's also competition that's very solid on the other side. Brandon Moreno having that shoulder injury to make him lose. Brandon Royval did, and he's got the loss to Pantoja, who's at the top of the division. So it's not like he's in the split decision over Reggie Bantarin, he got out of there, and he also submitted match now. So it's not like he's a schlep, or out of his league in any regard. But, I just think Nicolau's a little bit better in all of the areas that are going to matter in this fight. So I'm going to go with Nicolau to get it done. And those are really the only two prelim notables I have for UFC Fight Night, Holloway versus Allen. So with that being said, we can go ahead and we can jump into the main card. First fight on the main card is going to be Clay Guida taking on Rafa Garcia. And this is a really interesting fight here to start off the main card, because you got 41-year-old Clay Guida, the Carpenter, coming in. I think he might be one of the oldest guys, maybe not the oldest, but certainly atop that list at 155 pounds, still competing inside of the UFC, taking on Rafa Garcia, 28 years old. They have a very similar build. Clay Guida is going to be a little bit longer in this case. Clay Guida at 41 years old, in his most recent fight with Scott Holtzman, it was a split decision. He was winning at first, and Scott Holtzman was winning at first and doing better. And as the fight went along, Clay Guida started to get into kind of a little bit more of the Clay Guida rhythm that we're used to seeing. But you could tell that there was just something that was off about him. And I think, at 41 years old, and this took place four months ago, so it's not like he's going to look a little bit better. He didn't take that much time off, which, at 41 years old, is just super unpredictable. But Clay Guida is a guy who's, has the wild style. He's very, finicky. lanky and he moves a lot inside the cage. And I don't know how that's going to lend on his cardio as he continues to get older. And that accumulation of damage, you can see here 38 and 22. Some quick math tells you that is 40 fights. So this would be, or that's 60 fights. So, his 61st professional MMA fight for Clay Guida at 155 pounds. I don't know if all of them were at 155 pounds, but, at 41 years old, 41 and a half years old, taking on a young guy in Rafa Garcia who's, got some jiu-jitsu. He's got some, good leg kicks. He's really fast on the feet. I think Rafa Garcia is probably better at this point in his career than Clay Guida kind of all around. So I don't know if he'll be able to finish Clay Guida because traditionally Guida's just always been that guy to be able to hang in there and absorb a crazy amount of damage. And when we look back at the last 5 for Rafa Garcia, he's got the decision over Mahashete. He lost the decision to Drakkar Klose, submitted Jesse Ronson, the decision versus Natan Levy, and another decision lost to Chris Grutzmacher. So it's not like Rafa Garcia is a guy who's going to go out there and he's, getting all of these finishes and someone to necessarily be concerned with going out there and finishing Clay Guida. So I think this one's probably going to go to decision, but I think Rafa Garcia is good enough at this point in his career, 28 years old, has a decent history of MMA and also MMA success and also UFC success. I think he's on a roll here. He's on the upswing. I think obviously he's going to be able to outclass Clay Guida in basically every area. Not to say that Clay Guida is not going to have some successful moments, but I think, trying to take it to the ground, Garcia is going to be able to have the advantage there at this point in his career and be able to get the reversal. And I just think Rafa Garcia is also going to be the stronger guy at this point. Again, 41 years old, time catches up to everybody. And because of USADA, Clay Guida isn't able to use some of those, replacement therapies that maybe he would like to still give him that competitive edge. So for all those reasons, I'm going with Rafa Garcia in this first fight on the main card. Moving up the card, we are going to the second fight. It's going to be Pedro Munhoz taking on Chris Gutierrez. Chris Gutierrez is a very interesting prospect. And in his most recent fights against Frankie Edgar, he's got the knockout with the knee that, a lot of us remember. He's also had a really awesome spinning back fist followed up by elbows against Baccaral Dana. He used to be called as Dana Baccaral, if I do remember correctly. Now he's Baccaral Dana, and I still don't think I'm getting that correct. It's really difficult to get these pronunciations correct when it seems like they're changing from every fight to fight, but that's just me. I digress. He got the split decision win over Felipe Colares, and then another decision win over Andre Ewell. The Cody Durden fight, I don't remember exactly why that ended up being taken off the record there, but Cody Durden, he fought him, and he looked good in that fight as well. So Chris Gutierrez, El Guapo, I've really been a fan of him for a little bit now, and I like his style. I like how he likes to mix up the leg kicks with going to the ground. He is one of those styles that's pressing forward and throwing a lot of crazy stuff at you. As the fight goes on, as it gets into like the middle of the second and the third round, that's when you can start to see Chris Gutierrez fall off just a little bit because of the the amount of stamina and endurance that it takes to continue fighting at his pace. But when you got a guy like Pedro Munhoz, the young Punisher, not so young anymore, coming off a couple losses, coming off of that eye poke with Sean O'Malley, that could be said one way or another, where he actually got poked in the eye, whether he was I think he got punched in his left eye and then he got poked in his right eye, but the poke in his right eye was almost like a straight hand poke, so it wasn't the worst one we've ever seen, let's just put it that way. And then he was closing his other eye. He was talking about how he couldn't see, and maybe he could, maybe he couldn't, but then he was in interviews with the wrong eye closed. It just got all very confusing, and then he was saying that the camera angle was flipped on an interview to make it look like it was the opposite eye. It just got very confusing as far as what eye got poked, what eye had a knuckle in it. Was there an eye poke at all? Was Munhoz, trying to get out of that O'Malley fight without too much, pressure, damage, what have you. So a lot of stuff. So, Pedro Munhoz's back is going to be up against the wall, 19-7 at 36 years old, at 135 pounds. The younger you are, or I should say, the lighter you are, the earlier your career seems to come to a close. So at 36 years old, that's like being 38, 39 years old in the 55 pound division. And, it just kind of gets a little older after that. So Pedro Munhoz is definitely going to have his back up against the wall here. He's a guy who, can use his grappling to to keep the fight standing and has good boxing combinations and will also throw those low leg kicks, but you're not going to see a ton of head kicks out of him. You maybe see a couple kicks to the body or some teep kicks, but nothing too crazy out of Pedro Munhoz in terms of the lower half. And then, like I said, he uses his grappling to kind of feed into that offense. And he's been able to, have successful grappling and get those grappling wins in the past. But I think against a guy like Chris Gutierrez, who's going to be younger, who's going to be faster, who's probably hitting harder at this point in his career too. He's going to be the bigger guy here, coming in at 5'9" with a 67-inch reach as compared to Pedro Munhoz, who's 5'6". Now, Pedro Munhoz is used to being the shorter guy. Obviously, he's been 5'6" his entire life. At 135 pounds, that's not that bad, but 5'9" at 135 pounds, Chris Gutierrez is going to be a little bit bigger. He's going to have a little bit more range, especially with the legs. And like I talked about his leg kicks earlier, I think that's ultimately going to be a problem for Pedro Munhoz, who, I'm not saying he's necessarily looking for ways out of fights, but it did seem awfully like that with the O'Malley fight. And then, having the two performances, the loss to Dominic Cruz and the loss to Jose Aldo before that. It's not like they're slubs, but, he does have the loss to Frankie Edgar not too long ago, and that still wasn't the best version of Frankie Edgar. He's got the win over Jimmy Rivera, who that's not a great win at this point looking backwards. So I think Pedro Munhoz's best days are behind him. I think Chris Gutierrez is in his best days, or they're shortly up in front of him. I like the stylistic matchup for Chris Gutierrez taking on Pedro Munhoz. He'll be able to use those longer legs to use those leg kicks, which are more dynamic. I think he'll be able to keep out of the boxing range, but he's got good enough boxing range if it has to get there. And then when it comes to the ground, I think Chris Gutierrez can handle himself there. So I'm going Chris Gutierrez, El Guapo, to get it done over Pedro Munhoz. And looking at Tapology, they do agree with me. So that's definitely going to be the pick. And just want to say one more time, if you're out there and you're liking the videos, you're liking the picks, make sure you drop us a like on the video, subscribe, give us a comment, let us know what you think. Moving on up the card. Jan Cutelaba, not exactly sure. I've heard it pronounced both ways recently and long time ago. So it seems like Cutelaba changing by the day in terms of what he wants to be referred to as, nicknamed the Hulk. You got Tanner Boser for the first time, coming down from heavyweight. He's been a long, undersized heavyweight that has a lot of flab on him. We've seen him weigh in, I think, before as high as 250 or 240 pounds. Most recently, 229 pounds coming in. They still had a little bit of flab on him. That fight was 6 months ago. So I guess over those 6 months, he's gotten to a point where he maybe lost 10 more pounds of fat, can cut 10 more pounds, be able to make that 205-pound limit. So I'm really interested to see what Tanner Boser looks like at 205, the light heavyweight Tanner Boser, because he's always been a guy that's had good skill, but sometimes when it would come to grappling, because he would like to take guys down and use the ground and pound, sometimes because of his size, he wasn't able to hold guys down or get them down as effectively as maybe he would like to. He had the skill and the ability once he was down there, and the technique, should I say, but ultimately was just not going to be able to get it done on the ground, and a lot of that had to do with size. So dropping down to 205, he is going up against a very brolic Jan the Hulk Cutelaba. But Cutelaba, I would say his biggest weakness is his fight IQ. And if he's having success in one particular area of the fight, that doesn't mean he's going to keep it there. One would think if you're having success with the grappling, continue the grappling. That's not necessarily Jan Cutelaba. He has a little bit of that Michael Chandler gene, where he wants to go out there and he wants to put on an entertaining fight. He wants to brawl. So, he's the guy that we've seen in stare downs, kind of push people away and end up get fights canceled because of it. So Jan Cutelaba is a guy that, is very unpredictable, but I think in this one, this whole fight is actually very unpredictable because you have Cutelaba in it for one. You never know what version of him you're going to get. He is a solid fighter with a good skill set. And if it applies the right way in the right opponent, he could definitely beat a lot of people in the UFC, but we don't see those stars align a lot for Jan Cutelaba. And then Tanner Boser, like I said, he's a guy who has a lot of skill, but he was at a mismatched weight class, and he was getting overpowered mostly due to weight and size and strength, something that he couldn't totally control at that higher weight. So seeing him drop down now, he's 6'2", so he's not like the biggest guy for heavyweight, and he fits well into the light heavyweight division. So these guys are going to be roughly about the same size. I think Jan probably going to have a little bit more, or Ian going to have a little bit more strength to him. But again, it's going to be the first time we're going to see Tanner the Bulldozer at 205. So hard to pick. I'm going to go with Tanner Boser, though, because Cutelaba, he hasn't been on the best streak. Tanner hasn't either, but he's been able to pick up some wins recently, and, that's able to do that at heavyweight. So dropping down to light heavyweight. I know the guys are a little bit more skilled at light heavyweight than heavyweight, but I don't know if Jan Cutelaba is the most skilled guy in the division. Probably a good way to start. If Tanner Boser can keep his wits about him and, take advantage of not having a size disadvantage, I think he might be able to get Cutelaba to the ground. And Cutelaba is a guy who does tire out quickly. In that first round, if he comes out there and he tries to go crazy, he can absolutely gas out. So Tanner Boser is a guy who we've seen have pretty solid endurance and solid ability to take a hit, durability. So if he can get through the first 2 minutes, 3 minutes with Ian Cutelaba, I think it swings in his favor. So I'm going to go with Tanner Boser to get it done in his light heavyweight debut. Moving on up the card, we have, like I told you, these 6-fight main cards. It's like an endurance run to try and get through. We have Dustin Jacoby taking Azamat Murzakanov. Murzakanov is coming in at the plus 170, slight underdog, even though he's the undefeated fighter here. Coming over from Russia, fighting out of New Jersey, oddly enough. I haven't heard of K Dojo Warrior Tribe. But last fight was a ground and pound win over Devin Clark. He knocked him out cold at the third round after it looked like he was gassed after the first. He was going for a lot of takedowns after the second round. Azamat Murzakanov is a guy who has solid kickboxing, but he's going to throw like heavy leg kicks, low leg kicks, and he's going to have major combinations, namely the right and the left hook, looking to put people away. He's a shorter guy at 5'10", 71 inches for 205 pounds, and that's not going to be any difference here against Dustin Jacoby, who's 6'3" with a 78-inch reach. And having those 4, 5, 6 inches in terms of height, you're definitely going to notice that when the kicks come in for Dustin Jacoby, a kickboxer. But Azamat Murzakanov is no stranger to being the smaller guy, and in his last fight against Devin Clark is I think 6'2", so a big guy, but he's also got massive tree trunk thighs as legs. And Azamat Murzakanov for the first round was able to go out there and look pretty good against Devin Clark. And then, as he got tired in the second and third round, it definitely started to call it into question a little bit more, but he was still able to land big shots that Devin Clark was like kind of curling up from, and eventually was able to put it away. Azamat Murzakanov was, and, he was able to do a little bit of grappling and, I don't know why I said it like that, but he was able to do a little bit of grappling, able to get Devin Clark to the ground on a couple of times. And like I said, Devin Clark is a strong guy. He can grapple his own. He was a guy, out grappled by Ian Cutelaba, yes, but when you're a strong grappler or a strong guy, doing that wrestling, having somebody get you to the ground when you're that strong and you have a decent layer of training isn't anything to scoff at. And that's what Murzakanov being able to do that and having that Russian, base and background, he's going to have a good grappling core. And Dustin Jacoby is a guy who traditionally has had takedown defense be a real big weakness of his. If he's going one-on-one with a straight kickboxer, Dustin Jacoby can have a lot of success. But when there's any amount of grappling or wrestling or takedowns or clinch or fence involved, there's a lot of times where Dustin Jacoby's outmatched and finds himself on the ground. So I think because of that extra wrinkle that Azamat Murzakanov brings into it, along with the power, I do like him at the plus 170 underdog here. Now, he's actually the younger guy, even though he doesn't look like the younger guy from his Russian weather faced up against Dustin Jacoby. I just think Jacoby has a glaring hole in his game, which is going to be that grappling. I think because Murzakanov has that, and he also has the ability to put you out on the feet, and he's an established kickboxer, I don't think there's any particular area that Dustin Jacoby shines. So I'm going to be going with Azamat Murzakanov as the underdog pick. And, people on Tapology, not with me either. But, yeah, I'm going with Azamat Murzakanov to get this one done. I think on the feet, he's going to have some times where he's going to land the bigger punches. It'll be largely closer on the feet, but I think in the second and the third round, we're going to see Azamat Murzakanov kind of enter into those clinch positions and try to get Jacoby to the ground, and those are going to be the pivotal moments in the fight that's going to swing it for him. So I'm going Azamat Murzakanov to get this one done over Dustin Jacoby. Moving up to the co-main event now of Edson Barboza and Billy Quarantillo. I just want to say one more time to everybody, we really appreciate all the views we've been getting. It's been a pretty good uptick in the last couple of weeks. So we want to keep that going. Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know your thoughts on the video. What fight you're looking forward to most, what bets you like the best, what fight you're staying away from. Like you said, if you're watching the video, it's not that hard. Drop us a like. We really do appreciate it. It helps the channel a lot. And if you find yourself coming back and you find yourself watching these videos more recently or more often, make sure you subscribe. We really do appreciate that. Co-main event time. It is Edson Barboza taking on Billy Quarantillo. Billy the Kid, Billy Q. Billy Q is a guy who is known for his durability and his endurance. He's not going to go away. He's not the most technical striker out there. He is wild. He does get himself into bad positions. He does get hit a lot. He does brawl. But what he does have in spades is a really good chin and an ability to keep moving forward and not getting tired. So, in a lot of his fights, we've seen him, namely the Alexander Hernandez fight. I think he was getting beat up first, and then there was times where people had thought that Billy Quarantillo was going to be out of it, that the ref should have stepped in, and then he was able to turn that fight around and actually knock out Alexander Hernandez and lay it on him. He was landing really good combinations, and that's where Billy Q is actually the best. He'll throw like the jab out there, and he has a really good jab, and then once he has the opportunity, he throws wild combination. He's going to try and get you out of there, but he's able to, like, get into the pocket and land and trade, because he knows that at the end of the day, he's going to have the chin that's going to be able to stand in there, take it, and then deliver it back and deliver combinations. And he's gonna, he'll lose a round to be able to come back in the second and the third, because he knows he's just not going to go away. Against a guy like Edson Barboza, though, that's going to be a really challenging thought. I know Edson Barboza is plus 135 here, but Billy Quarantillo, he's had his legs chewed up before, and I think that was the problem in the Alex Hernandez fight. Alex Hernandez was chewing up his legs, and Quarantillo had to move forward on those on those marred legs, on those chewed up legs, and he still ended up getting the victory. But against a guy like Edson Barboza, where Edson's clearly going to have the speed advantage, and I believe Edson's even going to have is he going to have a reach advantage? Yeah, he's going to have a pretty significant one at that. 75-inch reach advantage, and with those long, fast leg kicks, I think he's going to be able to chew up the legs of Billy Quarantillo and make it really hard for Billy to come in. Now, what Billy's going to do is Billy's going to try and actually probably get on the inside and get it to a range that's too close to Edson, where Edson can't utilize those leg kicks. But I think as Billy tries to get in, Edson's leg kicks are so quick, he's going to be able to use a teep, kind of keep that distance, follow that up with, an outside leg kick or an inside leg kick. And in the first few minutes of the round, I think that's when Billy's really going to get his legs beat up. And Edson's so quick, and Edson's so good at moving around the cage and moving around the octagon. He's got so much experience that I think he's not going to be able to find himself tied, backed up against the cage. I don't think Billy Q is going to have the rig generalship to be able to cut off the cage and keep Edson with his back there. Both of these guys like to fight moving forward, and they have their worst performances when they're not able to do that, and when they have to get backed up because they're, getting pressed upon by their other opponent. I think because Edson has the reach advantage, he's being able to, evade some of those jabs from Billy, and he's going to be able to land instead. And then, that's going to keep Billy backed up a little bit, and then he's going to be able to land those leg kicks. So I think Edson Barboza, because if, he's had pretty good durability throughout his career. The Bryce Mitchell fight, Bryce Mitchell is a strong grappler who was just able to get in close. I know he did knock him down, but there was the threat of the takedown there, which, not that Billy's not going to take Edson Barboza down, but if Billy takes Edson Barboza down, it's not going to be anywhere near as dominant as what Bryce Mitchell did, where he was able to just stack him and beat him in the corner of the cage. So I think that's why Edson Barboza got that knockdown from Bryce Mitchell, because he was concerned about the takedown, which had him dropping his hands and left his face open. I don't think he's going to do that with Billy Quarantillo. I don't think it's going to be a similar fight at all. He did get knocked out by Giga Chikadze, but Giga Chikadze has power and speed that Billy Quarantillo doesn't possess. Quarantillo is going to overwhelm him with his volume later on in the fight. And I think Edson Barboza is just too good at this point in his career. He's seen too much. He's still really quick. And at 37 years old, he's showing us, that he's not necessarily ready to go away yet. Against the top level competition, sure, he loses, but, he's still able to, knock out Shane Burgos, which a lot of people aren't able to do. And that was a really great back and forth fight. He was able to get the win over Makwan Amirkhani, so Edson Barboza, Junior Barboza still got some in the tank. And as much as I love Billy Quarantillo, and even though he's the favorite, 34 years is not as much of an age disparity here, especially when Edson Barboza is one of those guys that could be old and still turn back the clock. I'm going with Edson Barboza to get this one done over Billy the Kid. And finally, our main event. And this is a good one at that. Max Blessed Holloway taking on Arnold Almighty Allen. This is a fight that I've went back and forth on because, Arnold Allen is a guy who's shown really good technique, really good. What I like the most about Arnold Allen is his really high guard on the feet. And a lot of times you'll see him kind of keeping his hands here, and then he also keeps the elbows up to prevent a lot of hooks and things from landing. They have to hit his arm, they have to hit his elbow, his bicep, his shoulder first. So it's a really good, like, kind of shell style of defense that prevents against the hooks. And he's got the hands here that's can prevent against the jabs. He can parry them really quickly and send a shot right back over the top at you. He's got quick movement, quick leg kicks. He's strong. He pressures his opponent. He moves forward. He's got a really good chin. He's on a really good win streak. And he's also somebody that, as they talk about him, that he's not very he's not very materialistic. He's not chasing the money. He's not chasing the fame. He just wants to say that he's the best at 145 pounds in the world. I think he's semi-famous or known for going to, I guess, what would be the UK version of, like a ShopRite or a Stop and Shop or a grocery store, and trying to get the cheapest meal possible, and counting his calories like a kind of like a poor person's kind of health cookbook kind of thing, street foods. So anyway, I think Arnold Allen is definitely in it for the right reasons. But you also got Max Holloway, and we're talking about Arnold Allen being young, being up and comer. He's 29 years old, so entering his prime. Max Holloway has been fought in the UFC for 10 years, and he's still only 31 years old. It's kind of crazy when you think about how many fights and how much longevity Max Holloway has shown. He still has that chin. I went back and watched a bunch of his fights. He's able to go in there and he's able to take elbows and kicks and knees from people, and it doesn't affect him. It glances off. It's almost like a Marvin Vettori style of total disregard for the power and what his opponent has coming back at him. And Max Holloway is just so good in his movement, with his head movement. And that's going to be an interesting fight because Max Holloway is usually the much bigger fighter, and he is going to be, have the bigger frame here, but he's actually not going to have the reach advantage. And, Arnold Allen training at a TriStar, I know at least for a period of time, he was over there. And then during the pandemic, I think he was virtually training with Faraz Sahabi, getting him in there via like Zoom to break down technique. So he's going to be solid on the ground. And we've seen that on occasion, but not a lot. I think this is going to be a mostly standing bout. I think whoever's moving forward is going to be winning more. But also, we saw Max Holloway. So in the first fight with Volk, he was moving back a lot and lost the fight. In the second fight that he still technically lost, but a lot of people think he won. I thought he won the first, second, and the third round. He was moving forward in those fights against Volk. So I think Max Holloway is going to want to move forward in this fight. And I'm just concerned that Arnold Allen, he's fought a lot. He's 19-1 at 29 years old. So he's got a decent history of MMA fights and a decent amount of UFC experience, but there's a big step up in competition. His last two wins, he's got the win over Dan Hooker when Dan Hooker moved down 145 pounds for the first time in a long time and basically just swarmed Dan Hooker, who seemed to maybe be unprepared for the weight class and, have some chin issues that may have been related to the weight cut. Regardless, he just swarmed Dan Hooker and got him out there in 1 or 2 rounds. And then Calvin Kattar, it was a back and forth round against Calvin Kattar. I don't know if anybody had a clear advantage. I think watching it the first time, I thought Calvin Kattar won the round, and I think watched it back most recently, and I thought Arnold Allen was winning the round, but it was close regardless until Calvin Kattar tried to throw a knee and kind of turn with it and ended up landing wonky on his right knee. Thought he got swarmed at the end of the round. The round was over, and then he tried to start the second round and immediately took one leg kick to it, and it was done. So he got out of there quickly, and that was really Arnold Allen's main 2 fights with top level competition. You have Dan Hooker at a weight class and a overall performance level skill set that wasn't up to his caliber, and then a Calvin Kattar via knee injury. Now, what I will say about Arnold Allen that I like a lot, especially in this fight, if Max Holloway is going to move in on him, Arnold Allen is really good at moving and getting out of the way and then landing big leg kicks either before or after that happens. And Max Holloway, people try to beat up his leg all the time. Volkanovski, namely, try to go after the leg. And I think Yair Rodriguez also put a lot of emphasis on going after Max Holloway's legs. But because Max Holloway has that, Polynesian, Samoan, Hawaiian, blood in him, he was able to just walk through that, act like it didn't matter, act like it didn't care, whether it didn't hurt, his legs are extremely conditioned, or he was able to just block out that pain, or a combination of the 3. Max Holloway was able to walk through those leg kicks from Yair, from Volkanovski, and eventually they weren't able to land those leg kicks anymore because he was getting into such close range in order to box with them and keep that head movement that they weren't able to get the distance in order to land those leg kicks. It's really hard to do that as you're moving backwards and as somebody's constantly coming into your space and he's not letting you breathe like Max Holloway's gonna. We haven't seen Arnold Allen in a 5-round fight. We've seen him in 3-rounders. We've seen him, have good stamina through all of them, but naturally, slow down a little bit in the second and the third round. Still able to get those fights and not able to get those, or still able to go get those decisions. But a lot of times, like against, Sadiq Youssef, against Nick Lentz, he really came out aggressive in the first rounds and, tailed off a little bit. Where Max Holloway, he comes out aggressive in the first round. I think it was notable that he didn't win the first round against Yair Rodriguez. Yair, might have taken a little bit from from him in terms of volume, but Mac was winning the harder shots. But that was notable that he'd go out there and have the more volume in the first round. So I think Max is going to go out there and try to have the most volume. It's going to be a competitive first round, a banger. Both of these guys have really good chins, so I expect it to go in the second, the third, and the fourth round. And being that it's the first time that Arnold Allen's had to go, 5 rounds, and he's going to have to keep that pace with Max Holloway. I think he can keep it for 1, 2, maybe even 3. But at around the second or the third round, it's when you start to see Allen fade and Max Holloway really step in there and start, being able to avoid some of the leg kicks or not seeing those leg kicks coming back, use the head movement, and start landing on Arnold Allen. I think ultimately he's going to get it done. I don't know if he's going to finish Arnold Allen. Like I said, haven't seen Arnold Allen be finished. Has he ever been finished? Let's see what his one loss is. His one loss was by decision. So haven't seen Arnold Allen ever get finished. And, I haven't seen Max Holloway get knocked out either. So I'm expecting Max Holloway to go out there and get a decision, especially when in the 5th and the 4th rounds. I can see him going out there and maybe taking the first round to set the tone. But Arnold, that's when he's going to have the most amount of stamina. So I wouldn't be surprised if Max Holloway dropped that first round. But I think Max Holloway is going to lock up the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, maybe even the second too, as we start to see Allen maybe fade from that Max Holloway pressure. So with all that being said, I see a lot of success in Max Holloway's future. But either way, this fight's going to be an absolute banger. And I think, this is going to be a fight where Arnold Allen learns a lot from, and he's going to come back. Like, look, you see Yair Rodriguez, fought Max Holloway, turned around, and is now a stud. Same thing with Calvin Kattar. It's like you get the rub from Max Holloway, and I don't think anything different from Arnold Allen. I just think Max Holloway, his fight IQ combined with his experience, combined with his speed and his precision in boxing and the ability to just keep that pressure and cardio for days and the ability to not feel pain. It's a crucial skill for an MMA fighter. So for all of those reasons, I got to go with Max Bless, the Breast Express. And that's my main card. So we'll run back through these real quick. But before I do, I just want to say one more time to everybody, we really do appreciate all the support we've gotten. We've been getting a couple comments on the different videos and the breakdowns this past week. I think we surpassed 1,000 views on the videos for the week. So that's a big milestone for us. So we want to keep the good times going. So if you're watching this right now, drop us a like, hit subscribe. We really do appreciate it. We're trying to grow it as much as possible. And drop us a comment. Let us know what picks were good for you, what weren't good for you. If there's anything that we didn't talk about, something that we missed, a fight that you want to hear about, let us know. Put it in the comments. We really do appreciate it. We want to grow this thing. So without further ado, let's get into the pick rundown. So with that being said, I am going to be going with the Jocelyn Edwards-Lucy Padalova fight. I'm going to take that one to go to decision. I'm also going to take Mateusz Nicolau to win a decision over Brandon Royval. Those are my undercard picks. For the main card, I'm going with Rafa Garcia over the aging 41-year-old Carpenter Clay Guida. I think Rafa Garcia is going to be able to get that one by either KO or by decision. Clay Guida, he's still shown to be pretty durable. I'm going with Chris Gutierrez over Pedro Munhoz. There's a lot of older guys that are aging that are taking on young uppercomers. This is one of them. Chris Gutierrez, I think he's going to get the win. Tanner Boser, first time at 205. I think he's going to get it done and find a new home against Ion Cutelaba. Azamat Murzakanov is going to come out there and get the underdog win over Dustin Jacoby by utilizing some of his grappling advantages. And he's got that heavy hand, so don't be afraid. Watch out for that. Edson Barboza, I think, is going to be able to get it done over Billy Quarantillo. Right now, Edson is an underdog. I don't know if it's going to stay that way. He's super fast, even though he's got a little bit of age over Billy Quarantillo. I think experience is what's going to matter here. And Billy's a little bit wild. He leaves himself open, and Edson still can put people away. And finally, I'm going to go with Max Blessed Holloway to get it done over the very young, the very dangerous, and the up-and-comer in Arnold Almighty Allen. With that being said, we really do appreciate everybody sticking it out for the videos. Like, comment, subscribe. With that being said, we will see you next week. Keep an eye out for the pick rundown, and Keith's going to have his own individual video coming out a little bit later. Make sure you're following us on Instagram and YouTube. Obviously, if you're on YouTube, but Instagram and Twitter. And we're also on Spotify, so check us out there. Thanks. Have a good one.